Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end of life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. When someone dies, we come together. We gather in rooms, we speak their name, we share stories. Funerals and memorials are more than ceremonies. They're how we tell the story of a life and remind ourselves who we are as a community. The ritual matters. It shapes how we grieve, how we remember, and how we carry someone forward. Today, I'm joined by Ruby Cohen Love, trained thanatologist, funeral designer, and creative director of Cafe Mortel. Ruby's journey with fear, grief, and self expression has led her to reimagine what a funeral and memorial can be, something deeply personal, creative, and true to the person being honored. At the center of her work is a simple belief. When we face death honestly, we find more meaning in life. And when we gather to say goodbye, that moment can be both beautiful and true to the person we're honoring. So grab a warm drink, find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. Ruby, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here today.
Honored to have you. Thank you. Now, can we start off and can you share a little about yourself and what first drew you into thinking about death and funerals?
It's all about fear of death and fear anxiety, I would say. I couldn't even sleep with my lights off when I was a kid because just the mere reminder of that sensation that we don't know what that sensation will be, but just light off, I cease to exist, I cease to be me. That has been really a fascination since I was a kid. And I guess I always had that in my mind. I went to study fashion communication at Centre St. Martin's in London. I come from Guatemala City. So I was determined to go to London to study fashion. I thought I wanted to be a designer, but then on the path, I discovered that my communication skills were really what I wanted to pursue. So fashion, the arts, design have always been present in my life. I grew up in a house of artists. My stepdad is a sculptor, my mom is an architect, and I was surrounded by painters and sculptors and gallerists and actors all my life. Combining that with the fear of dying, I think it just was an amalgamation of all these factors together. And that is, I think, what made me so existentialist. And combining that with art, that is really the source, I believe, um, as well as my mom getting the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis when I was 14.
Mm.
Definitely events in my life that have also brought that topic to the forefront.
Now, I know that we've talked, and
Mhm.
I know that in general, you're very open about living with bipolar disorder. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, how has that shaped the way you see mortality and your own life story?
Wow, bipolar has been my curse and my biggest blessing. I think the word that I can describe this whole experience with bipolar is in one word is just gratitude. But I've been in hell. I've been to hell and back, and it's wonderful. That's a quote I just read from Louise Bourgeois, and I thought it was amazing. I've been to hell and back, and it was wonderful. And I think in a way that that's what I've experienced with bipolar, and it has shaped every aspect of who I am without tainting my identity. Because I think what can happen with mental health is that you will associate your identity with a condition, and then you can create this cage for yourself, for who you can be and for who you will never be. It's both. It's very tricky, and I've been there already in that cage. But I think that I'm very thankful to that bipolar, but it has shaped me and in the way that I see death, because during the episodes, so for those who are not familiar with bipolar, I will just briefly give an explanation. I think it's very important to explain what bipolar is and the dangers that bipolar can bring, because I know it's very popular to now say in a casual conversation, don't be so bipolar, right? Don't be so bipolar and don't change so drastically. Um, And, I understand that you have these terms here and there, but bipolar type 1 is severe and you need to be hospitalized whenever you have an episode, that being depressive, which can last, in my case, around 6 months, in bed at the brink of suicide and living every second of your day as a hell. Or the other side of the spectrum, manic episodes, you feel like a superhero, superwoman, you're spending all your money, you have a hypersexuality, and in 2 weeks, you can get in a debt, get in a car, drive without having slept for a week, and kill somebody. I mean, the amount of danger that you can get yourself into during a manic episode, it just goes beyond what you can imagine, because one problem leads to another and another and another, and it just is rolling like down a mountain of disaster. And that leads to hospitalization. So whoever has bipolar type 1 will have to be hospitalized at one point in their life. And that has been the case for me. And I have been hospitalized 3 times, 4 manic episodes, and 3 depressions. And the depressions that have lasted 6 to 8 months, as well as the manic episodes, which have taken me out of my life. So that's a social death. And this is why I want to touch this specific point, because the social death of a psychiatric hospitalization is so severe. It will remove you completely from your life. Your relationships will have been severed, your professional opportunities have been destroyed, everything. You're grieving every aspect of your life. And I think that from such a young age, I'm 29 now, and the first hospitalization was at 19. The return to society from hospitalization is so rough. It's similar, and it's never going to be the same, but it's similar to someone being in jail. They also suffered a social death. Nobody wants to hang out with someone that was in prison or someone that was raped or someone that had this severe case that it puts you out of society. And this grief is real. It doesn't have to be about someone dying physically to experience severe grief and mourning processes. And that's how it's shaped me. I've been dead whilst I was alive. And I think that is the worst possible death that exists, because so many people out there are dead alive.
I'm curious how that affected. I know you said that you were afraid, you had a
Mm.
fear of darkness, you had a fear of death from your childhood.
Yeah.
How did, at 19 and then the last 10 years, how has your bipolar disorder, how has that shifted the way that you see death, also going through that sort of death that you have gone through so many times?
I continue to be scared of death, physical death, that moment where I'm gonna cease to exist, and that remains a mystery, no matter how much work I do around death. I think that continues. But the perspective that it has given me on life And I think that is the most important thing is I was just so grateful for a ray of sunlight on my face after I had come back to life. And uh, looking at a flower was enough.
Mm.
It was just enough. And and that, and I remember those moments very vividly when that was enough for me. That has shifted the way I live, and it's pushed me to live intentionally, to express what I feel, to say I love you, to hug people more, to make decisions based on what really matters. I think having death at the forefront of your mind really makes you think of what matters to you, what's important, who am I spending my time with, what am I doing with my time, what am I doing with my youth and this time of my life? Because I think the biggest illusion we have is I have time. I have time and you don't. And that has been the biggest gift bipolar has given me.
Now, I know that many people, including myself, we do something called death meditation, where we imagine our deaths and in a very visual fashion, even seeing our bodies decay. And
Mm.
um, you've done something similar by envisioning your own funeral, which when you told me about, my mind was blown and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Um, can you tell everyone about it? Because it's really it's really cool, everyone. So if, can you,
Of course, of course. Well, the first time I envisioned it, I was 21 and I was in a trip in Copenhagen with one of my good friends from St. Martin's. And we went to a secondhand shop and I take my purchases very seriously. So I came across this coat, which was just beautiful. It was like a Western cut, but it was an Asian, maybe Chinese mint color silk with little yellow flowers. It was just beautiful. And it took me like 2 hours to decide, do I want the coat? Do I not want it? And then this whole process in my mind led me to think, well, this purchase is going to be important. It's going to outlive me. This code is going to outlive me. So I better take a good decision. Like it's not a light decision for me because this object is going to live longer than. So finally I bought it. I took it back to my hotel. Very not a great one. It was just a hostel, you know. Just not a
hostels
nice
are a
hostel.
lot of fun, okay? That you meet a lot of
Yeah.
people. There you go.
They were. And then I hung it. I hung it under like a little spotlight and I lied on the bed and I was just admiring my purchase because I was so proud of this coat. And when I was looking at it, I literally jumped out of the bed and I said to my friend, "Oh my God, I've got it! I've got it! I've got it!" It was really a moment that struck me. And I said, "What if my funeral was a fashion exhibition? Like that, like that, the coat hanging there." And it's just gonna tell the story when I was in Copenhagen with you. And everybody's gonna know that this object marked this time in history. And then I thought, well, I want it in a gallery and I want all these clothes laid out like an exhibition. And I think your objects can tell your story. And if you think about it that way, then you also buy differently.
Yep.
You also collect differently because you want to tell your story through what you own. And that was the beginning. And it was a bit of a joke for about 3 years. And I would tell everybody, yeah, I want my funeral to be like that. What would you want? What would your funeral be like? And I had these conversations for about 2, 3 years. And then I started realizing, well, this is actually something people want and people need. And that was the origin of of thinking of my own funeral.
That's brilliant. It really, and I love how, we discussed before how seeing death and being so close to death,
Yeah,
how it makes you look at your life so much differently. Um, and how you've changed that, or you've incorporated what you even purchase, how you live, what you spend your money on.
yeah,
Um, those are decisions that shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think that we all right now take those decisions way too lightly. It's things that we have
absolutely.
versus experiences that we have. So I think
Yeah.
that's really, as I said, cool. It's a great concept, and
Thank you.
I'm probably going to be gone before you are because I'm a bit older than you are, but I'll be watching that from wherever I am when it does
Well, you
happen.
know what? I mean, it's interesting you say that because it's not even about age,
Yeah,
right? And I think that's what I try to do in my work is just say there's not a correlation between age, health condition,
yep,
and death. It's and actually, yeah, the deaths that occur out of the expected timeline are the most difficult to grieve. Um, but I was gonna say I will be hosting my funeral rehearsal in November,
oh,
this November. So you are most welcome to come. It's a rehearsal, but it's also a funeral to my 20s because I'm
mm,
gonna be 30. And I thought this was the right moment to do that. So 10 years later, almost 10 years later, after conceiving the idea, I thought it was a beautiful thing to do at this time.
that is really nice. So in November, London.
Yes.
Are you interested, Oren? London, November? He gave a thumbs up. So that's
Yeah.
yeah, we love London. We really do.
Awesome.
Um, so I am curious again about how you went from, so we know that what you went through, your fair in
Mhm.
childhood, your bipolar, your own funeral. How did you transition that into your business, Cafe Mortal? I mean, that's maybe not a big jump, but that's a jump.
It's a jump. It's a jump. It's definitely how do you transform what it's a bit like an art project into a business, which I'm still exploring and I'm still building, and it's fascinating and I love it. And I think I do have that calling, and I do feel like this is what I was meant to do in this lifetime, and that is rewarding on its own. I think it was the jump, if you wanna call it that, was after having these conversations all over and over and over and over again of what would you like for your funeral? And my friends would reply the wildest things, you know. Some people would be like, I want everybody to come naked to my funeral. I want to become I will never forget this. I want to become a diamond butt plug. But you see the personalities. You cannot fit this kind of people into what's available. I mean, that's a disgrace, right? If you want to really honor people. So I started seeing all these personalities. You know, I want everybody to be dressed in orange in a beach. It, these are productions, and I I trained as a creative director and producer, so I see that link there very easily because a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, whoa, you went from funerals to fashion." And I'm like, well, it's the same thing to me. It's the same. I haven't changed anything.
Yep.
Clothes are so important. They were so important as the objects I'm mentioning. So when I was graduating from Centros and Martins in 2021, I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna found this company. I'm just gonna do this. And I found so the idea came in 2017. In 2020, I founded the company in the UK and I named it Cafe Mortel. And the reason for that is Cafe Mortel is the name of a movement. Cafe Mortel is the movement that started the death cafes. So everybody knows the death cafes, but actually the movement started in Switzerland with the French name Cafe Mortel. So it means the same thing, death cafe and Cafe Mortel. And it was started by Bernard Crétaz, which is an anthropologist who passed away, I think, 2 years ago. And I never got to meet him, but I hope one day I will in another sphere. And he said if we have coffees or cafes to discuss science, café scientifique, and we have cafes to discuss politics, café politique, why don't we have a café mortel to talk about death? Because in a society where religion has been displaced, death is hidden from our cities, from our industrial areas, and we live longer. And in this time and age, it's so important to talk about death and have that open dialogue. And cafes have been the place where revolutions have begun.
Mm.
And I fell absolutely in love with the term because it's actually a term and it's an activity. A café mortel is an activity to talk about life and death with a cup of tea and cake and food. And it was inspired by his culture in the Alps in Switzerland, where they would all have these amazing banquets for funerals, and they would have the best cheese and the best wine and laugh and just yeah, laugh and cry and eat. I think food is important, is essential as fashion and food and just all what is human, right? It's just human. And I named it Cafe Mortel in 2020. And it's been quite a process because it's been interrupted by bipolar as well.
Mm.
So the last episode for me was 2020, last months of 2020, and let's say the whole 2021, I was just in crisis. So from 2022, so I had already given up. I was like, I can't do it. I'm limited. I definitely have a limitation, and I don't think I can achieve what I want. So I'm just gonna give up. And I started looking for jobs in fashion, and then I was like, I just can't do it. I can't work in an office sending emails, knowing that my calling is another thing because that's death to me. I was gonna be the most miserable person if I just did anything else that is not Cafe Mortel. And but I spent maybe 2 years just as a waitress. Just I was just completely I wanted to avoid all responsibility. And I just did that and thought I give up. And then I started making cakes because, Cafe Mortel is to eat cake and have tea and talk about death. And I was like, you know what? I'll just make the cakes and nobody's going to ask me questions. Whilst I'm a bit weak still, so I'm just going to make the cakes. And I started making the cakes. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I don't have the business training to actually do this. So I started an MBA, which was great because they would consult you weekly and they would help you build the business. So I started with the cakes. And then I think a month in, I was like, nope, I'm going back to Cafe Mortel. I need to build this. And that's when I started again. So in 2024, like beginning of 2024, I went back to it.
Nice.
And that's how I made the jump. That's a big jump.
Yeah, it is a calling, and I love that you use that term because it is
Mm,
definitely a calling. No one gets into this just because, out of, I think I'll try this. This sounds good. Every single person that I've talked to that's in some kind of death care, in the death care community, is really in the grief care community. We all have our stories, and there's something that really is pivotal that
Yeah,
has happened to us, and um, it is a calling.
absolutely.
There are
Absolutely.
a lot easier ways to make money and to make a lot more money. So the calling is a good word for it. I love that you use your creativity um, when you're helping people. How do you see that creative expression is part of legacy and even end of life planning? Because that's what you're doing. You're doing the end of helping people with that.
Yeah. Well, I think nowadays we have this concept of what is productive and what is not productive. And whatever is not productive, then we don't really pay attention to it. And it all comes down maybe to the money, right? If it's productive and it makes money, then you pay attention. And I think that's where art comes in. Is it useful? No, it's not useful in the sense of productivity, all right? But the beauty of art in our death rituals is absolutely important because it's meaningful. But that's where we need to shift our focus. It's not because people ask me, but why would I do that? Because it's not productive. So that's why I use this example of productivity because it's like, yeah, but I'm not gonna die. What if I die in 50 years? But you can plan it today, which will have an effect on how you live.
Yep.
At the same time, is an act of service for people who will grieve you because it is a nightmare for families to arrange that. First of all, they have to go to a standardized service that they absolutely hate. They are charged so much money because the decisions were not made. And that's what my mission is just think about it today. It will improve your life and it's an act of service for others when you're gone. Because there's a difference between grieving and work, like the grief work
Yep.
is two different things. So you want to leave people with just the grief and not the grief work and all these bills and this craziness. It's I think there's a beautiful essay that I always quote and I love it so much and it's called The Utility of the Useless. And it talks about how culture and art are absolutely crucial. It's not the same to have a house that is just concrete with holes and like whatever door and whatever. But when you're in there, it's just beautiful. You see the details, you see the design, you see the beautiful chair, you see the like we live for beauty. I don't think I could live in a world where there's no art and no beauty. I would just take me now. So why would beauty not be involved in our death rituals? Why have we removed art? Why have we removed beauty? It's not it's not one or the other. The fact that it's beautiful is not going to undermine the sorrow and the nostalgia and sometimes the tragedy. But I think it just makes it better and meaningful because at the end of the day, that experience will live in your memory forever
Yeah.
in the living, right?
I think that part of art and ritual is to set not only an intention, that person setting an intention by planning for this, but I think it's setting the mood, it's elevating people. Art, music, literature, even philosophy. I think that
Mhm.
I'm going to sound very Californian, you guys. Sorry for the woo-woo-ness, but I think it takes and it elevates our vibes. It elevates our spirits. We're spiritual beings. When it comes down to it, this is our body, yes, but when we die, we shed it like a coat, and we have our spirit. This is my personal belief. No science will prove this. Sorry, but this,
Absolutely. There's meaning, is meaning, right? Is if the ritual we're performing doesn't mean anything to us and it's a replica of something we don't believe in, it will just be hollow.
yeah,
So what I am building and what Cafe Mortel does, it is a funeral. But when I say funeral, I mean a funeral. My definition of funeral is that it's any ceremony, any action, any moment, or any thought that causes a catharsis to people who are living and honors someone that has died. So a funeral can have many shapes and timelines because Cafe Mortel is not a funeral home. So we don't have the restriction of this needs to happen in 3 days. I'm saying if you want a ballet produced for your funeral, well, let's do it 2 months after the death, or maybe you want to do an anniversary of the death and like honor them 10 years later and you do a production. And that's still a funerary rite. I think the concept of funeral has been just crammed into this image that is universal, that hasn't changed in 200 years, that we can redefine now. And I think that's very exciting.
yeah. I love that you bring up the ballet and you bring up that as an example. I'm curious. I'm always very curious, but you said that funerals are a reflection of a person, who they are. What does this look like in practice? Like from when you're first contacted by the person, what is that process like? And can you give us some examples also of funerals and work that you have done or that you're in production with, just to give people an idea of what's possible?
Well, I love the example of my mom because we are just so used to talking about it. That is quite a natural conversation. And I think it should be. I mean, I don't understand why bringing up death is kind of an insult. Sometimes I think there might be some superstition around death as well, that if you talk about it, then you're gonna die and all these things. But yeah, it's very natural to talk about it with my mom, and like it is a funeral that I talk of all the time. And it's a beautiful example because it breaks with the formats of what you usually have in your mind, the casket, the flowers, the same flowers, the same car, and all this. Oh, horrendous. It just makes me, yeah, horrible, horrible, horrible. She studied in Italy, she studied architecture, and she just had such a profound love for Italy, undescribable. And she said, well, you know what? I don't want like a I don't want like a traditional funeral, like reception or whatever. She said, I want you, your brother, and your my stepdad to go to Vicenza, where I studied in Italy,
Mm.
and just walk in the streets and look at the architecture from Palladio, which is this amazing architect, and drink Aperol spritz in a piazza in Italy, in Vicenza, just seeing his incredible buildings and dress in white and listen to Andrea Bocelli, Vivo per lei. And that's her funeral. It's a
Mm.
trip. Her funeral is a trip.
But that's remembrance, which is what, and ritual, which is what a funeral is. A funeral is not about what we do to the human body, because the
Right.
spirit is, there is the taking care of the body and making sure that it's well tended and buried or whatever you want to do with it. That's one aspect of a person's death, but that's separate from really remembering them and who they
Mm.
were. Because when you're talking about a person, like when I think about my mom or my dad, yeah, they're in their 80s now. So I know what they look like. Like in reality, I talk to them, I see them, but what I see is their spirit. I see them when they're in their like 30s and 40, like 40s when I was a child, right? That's how like I envision my parents. That's not their body today, but that's who they are to me. That's their spirit. And so
Mm.
that's what will remember when I remember who they were, not their body. Um,
Absolutely.
I love that you talked about funerals and the expense and how because we actually in the United States have something called funeral debt.
Wow.
Yeah, and it is like the third most expensive thing following a house and a car is a funeral that people will, because our funerals, if you go to a regular funeral and you have the burial, casket, all of that, costs upward of 25 plus $25,000 plus.
Wow.
And so a lot of people are
Incredible.
shying away from that, saying, okay, we're going to be
Of
cremated,
course.
but we also want to remember people in, do something different. When I work with people to plan what their deaths will be, what their, after their funerals, because like you, I agree that one of the best gifts you could give of your family is to make sure everything is taken care of
Yeah.
before you pass away so they can focus on being a family and being together and grieving versus going to the bank, which over here, that's what we'd be doing. We'd be going to the bank and all of this other stuff. Um, and the thing that most people get really and like excited, I would say excited about um, music that they're going to play and the
Yeah.
food. Food is really big. Everyone has
It's
an
yeah.
opinion about the food that they want at their
It's so
memorial or funeral.
important.
It's really funny. It's really, really funny.
I just had this conversation. So I'm collaborating with an amazing artist who is a master perfumer.
Mm.
Her name is Azzy Glaser, and I offer her bespoke service of fragrance creation. But she's created incredible scents for characters in films for method acting. So she's done Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, and she created Bellatrix smell for Harry Potter and
Wow.
Queen of Hearts, and Johnny Depp as a Mad Hatter. So she's done incredible work, but she also does bespoke fragrances for people. And we are collaborating in that angle of scent as immortalization. We just had I just interviewed her and I asked her what food would you serve at your funeral? So I just remembered this. And she said, it was really funny. She was like, oh, well, because I asked her and she was really not prepared. So it's really interesting to see the first reaction and the first answer they give you. So she said caviar and oysters, and she
Wow.
was laughing. She was like, but she said, I also like little bits of everything, like all the yummy food that I like mini sausages and fairy cakes homemade. And
Mm.
um, she was so excited to think about it. She was like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's do this. And
Mm.
you're talking about a funeral. And in general, when people talk about it with me, they're just so happy and excited, which is unexpected. You would think it's the opposite, but they are quite relieved that they can talk about it with somebody.
What would you serve at your funeral?
Well, I recently said that I wanted to have So I'm from Guatemala, so I wanted to have just tortillas like made there because in Guatemala we have like this big like grill where they do the tortillas fresh. And we have the refried beans and like the guacamole and the cheese and like I could eat that every day of my life. And since I'm a kid, I would eat that in bed watching cartoons. And right now, this is what I crave. And I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, I think I just have to serve this when I'm gone because this is what I would eat every single day of my life. And I think people who know me very well, maybe not even in London, because here I don't have access to this, but people who really know me, they would know that this is what I wanted. You know, I so um but I it's funny because what I was gonna also say is that planning a funeral is not fixed, is not static. It's something you can review every year and use it as that exercise yearly. Like people who
Mhm.
rewrite their wills every year. It's a similar mindset that I'm suggesting is like you don't have to stick to that plan forever. Just make a list today, like make other decisions because it's not only the design of the ceremony, which of course this is my specialization and I'm saying let's design it and I'm going to give you creative direction in your ceremony, but it's also make decisions. How can I die greener? Can I have a mycelium coffin that disintegrates in the soil? And be completely sustainable because death is extremely unsustainable. And we do have that responsibility. And we are more and more and more every year. So, how many more deaths can the planet also take? Because cremation is the absolute worst for the environment. And the caskets is also not ideal because you use materials, then you bury them and you contaminate the soil. So I'm not really, I don't really promote caskets at all. Like it's not, people tell me, oh my gosh, you should have these experiences where people get in coffins. And like, I'm like, no, coffins are out of the vision. Like it's either a company that makes mycelium coffins and that they promote cemeteries as parks and botanical gardens. Let's go for that, right? Um, so it's also do you want to donate your organs? Do you want to save lives? Do you want, it's so many decisions that are, do you want to donate to science? That so many people would. And I think you can save like 8 people, or it's a large number of how many people you can save with donating your body and your organs, including skin for people who have burns and stuff. So I also want to be this hub of suggestions of how to die greener through different partners. Maybe I'm not doing this directly, but I do think that being an advocate for dying greener is is important, and also to support people who can't afford a funeral. Like I think having this causes is also very important to me.
Yeah. Well, I got a list for you of good green burial options that
Amazing.
yeah, everything from reef burials to where they
I've
rebuild
heard about
reef.
that.
Yeah, which is amazing
It's
to,
fantastic.
yeah, the parks are becoming much more popular here also. People are actually, you have companies that are buying forests that are in risk of being developed on, and they're using
Exactly.
that as burial, a place to do green
It's
burial, which is
amazing.
feed the trees.
Is the future. I mean, this is a completely circular approach.
Yes. Yes. And that's how it should be. That's how it used to be. And
Exactly.
that's how it should continue. That's how we should circle back to that. I
Absolutely.
totally believe that. Um, Now, if someone is listening to this and they want to start envisioning their own celebration of life, their own funeral, what questions should they be asking themselves or start to ask themselves in order to start off this process?
What am I doing with my time? Who am I spending my time with? How do I want to be remembered? What objects are important to me? I would start with those. I mean, those will completely reassess your how you're living, and that will give you your answer. I mean, how you're living is how you're dying. You have to look for the answers in your own life. You can't just invent something. I mean, maybe it's something you're living inside in secret, but that's going to reveal in those questions because that will tell you that you're not living like what you want to do.
Yeah,
So it's a really powerful exercise.
yeah.
Because then the food and the music and all of that, sure, we can do that. But first, you really need to tackle that. What am I doing with my time? Like if you're collecting tables and you love collecting tables, or like you have a collection of toys from this 80s or whatever, maybe it's just an exhibition of those toys. What is your core joy in this life? How does that manifest? That would be my main question, really.
I've talked to a lot of people who are dying, and it's always about family, friends, and some, and uh, yeah, it's never about work or money.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, unless it's a passion for you, like unless it's really a source of joy for you,
yeah,
because I have it very in my mind. For example, my stepdad is a sculptor, and he
mm,
absolutely adores his work, and his
yeah,
sculptures are and will be his funeral most likely. My and his mom had a bakery, and she's almost 90, and she would still wake up at like 5, not now, but she would like a year ago still go make her bread because she loves it. I wouldn't satanize work if it's actually what you want to do, like is with my case. I will probably be talking about Cafe Mortel when I'm dying. Absolutely. I will be like, thank God I did this. But that's what it should be, right? So if what you're doing is not giving you that, then it's something to think about.
yep, definitely. Um, how can families begin to bring a person's story into a funeral or a celebration of life? Because I would say the majority of people won't plan their funeral before they pass away, which is unfortunate,
No,
so
yeah.
unfortunate. Um, so it's left to the family.
So I've had some families reach out and said, my mother or my grandma passed away and the funeral didn't really represent her. We would like to organize a memorial ceremony with you that actually honors her or him or whoever it is. And it's interesting because if you are the one planning it, you are controlling the story. But if it's the family, they will plan something from their perspective on how they viewed the person. So it's completely two different approaches. From the family, there's the perception. They will want to talk about what was important to them. It's an interesting thing that they feel there's a void after they've had the funeral, and that they feel like this didn't honor my mother or this didn't honor my grandmother. And that's something I've learned. Like that's something that has come organically. I don't have a specific, I don't discriminate anybody can approach me young, for their own pre-planning, or middle age, or later in life. There's no real age, or but the perspective and the angle on how the creativity comes is very different, because it's two different stories.
So I want to round back to your fear of death. And you
Yeah.
said that you're still afraid of death. Um, what would you say to other people who are afraid of death? And has your fear of death, how has that changed lately? Because you're like, I know my fear of death, while you know, has changed because of what I've just seen, what I've experienced, right? And I'm not as afraid of it now as
Mm,
I
mm.
used to be, just through my experiences. Has there been any shift like that for you, because of either maybe you're living your life differently and you know that you're not going to have regrets or something like that?
Yeah, definitely the regret part. I do a good job in that sense of living the best I can, doing, I guess it's really staying true to myself. That's a good summary for it. It has changed because I talk about it all the time and I feel less alone. And I think that's the most important thing I would say to people listening is we all have death anxiety. And whoever says that are not afraid of death, well, I don't believe them, because there is a scientist that said that there's 8 dimensions of fear of death. So one of those 8, I'm sure you're afraid of one
Of
of
course.
those, right? And not you, like people in general. Um, Fear of suffering, fear of the moment of death, fear of the afterlife or whatever is next, fear of losing others. So there is so many angles of fear of death that I've learned about and I've recognized in myself. But definitely what has shifted the fear is to see that fear in others and feel in this companionship and this empathy that is created by just recognizing that we're both, with whoever you're talking, we're both dying and we're both gonna go there, and you feel less alone. The more conversations you have about it, the more you can process it, because sometimes we're not even aware that we have death anxiety and it's just floating in your mind and it just bottles up. So I think dialogue is really important. Like, for example, just asking my mom, what flower would you become? And she said, a white orchid.
Mm.
And just now I know that when she's gone, whenever that happens, like I always will have a white orchid. But it's just these dialogues that make this possible, and these answers calm me down, because I will know what to do, or at least there is some refuge that I can find. Um, my grandfather is 99,
Mm,
so
wow.
I know, it's coming, and I'm scared of him dying. I'm so scared. At the same time, I think it's a strange sensation that I'm gonna see him again, so I'm not so worried. But I have like recorded our conversations. I've like asked him, "Are you scared of death?" And he's like, "Well, it's the biggest mystery in life, so nobody knows." And even he's 99, and nobody knows. He's
Yeah.
So I think the conversations have helped me to feel in good company, but at the end of the day you are alone. So it's just being in peace with that fact that we don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say, you know, that you're alone, that at the end of the day you're alone.
Mm.
And I don't know. I don't know because when people die, they and we've seen they before the actual death, they're starting to talk, have full-on conversations with people who have died
Yeah,
before
yeah,
them, their
yeah.
loved ones. And you're going to be there for me, aren't you? Yeah, yeah. He'll be here. Uh, for those who are listening, I'm
So cute.
pointing to Merlin, my cat, the oldest cat of our household.
So cute.
But they start to have full-on conversations. It's really heartwarming. It's really,
Yeah,
um, and so I fully believe that people are there to, your loved ones are there to help guide you. The ones who've gone
yeah,
before will be
yeah.
there. Uh,
But in the earthly perspective, because I
yes.
always remain very earthly, because not everybody will relate. And at
Yes.
the end of the day, we are alone in that perspective, in an earthly perspective.
Yep.
We are we are alone, and nobody really knows. And that mystery is hard to, sometimes when I'm asleep and I just sometimes you're kind of half asleep and you just don't even know who you are kind of moment.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, what's gonna feel, we don't know. We don't know. Like Tibetans say that meditation is a death form, because you're gone. But I think an important there's an important aspect of keeping the conversations, at least in my spaces and the spaces that I host with Cafe Mortel, to preserve that earthly quality, because there are so many beliefs and nobody's gonna believe the same, and then that just is gonna cause conflict, not
Yeah.
empathy. So I
Yeah.
try to just I have rules when people come to Cafe Mortels. I send them out the day before, 2 days before the event, and they are precisely that. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about spirituality in that way, or afterlife of ghosts or spirits, because they will alienate a lot of people. But what we all share is that we're all going to this unknown territory, and I maintain myself in this space.
It's about celebrating the human being that they were.
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
Now, what do you want people to take away from experiencing or learning about Cafe Mortel?
That thinking about death will make them live better. This is in a nutshell what it is. They will have more open conversations, honest conversations. I mean, it happens to me all the time. When someone asks me, what do you do? They're already telling me their life and their deaths and their everything. So it just cuts straight to what matters.
Now, if
Mm.
there's one thing that a person can do after they listen to this episode, what would you encourage them to do? Just one thing.
Go tell people they love them.
So, well,
That's it.
Ruby, thank you so much for being on the show
Thank
today.
you,
And before we wrap
Tracy.
up, can you share with people how they can learn more about you and Cafe Mortel and get in contact?
Yes, of course. So you can follow us on Instagram, cafemortel.world, or you can fill out our service inquiry form on our website to find out more about a memorial or pre-planning on www.cafemortel.world. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, which is also on the Instagram or in the website. And also feel free to send an email at contact@cafemortel.world. And those are all the options, I think.
Great. And we'll put all of those, of course, in the description so people can get a hold of you. As you've heard today, funerals aren't just about endings. They're a chance to tell a story, to honor someone in a way that feels real and true. When we bring intention and creativity to those moments, We give ourselves more than a ceremony. We create a goodbye that truly feels like the person that we're honoring. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.